My name is Isla, and I'm about to tell you how my sister's desperate plea to donate my eggs exposed a conspiracy that destroyed everything I thought I knew about my family. It started with a midnight phone call, Grace sobbing about her last chance at motherhood, begging for the one thing she said only I could give her. But 3 days into the hormone injections, a fertility counselor pulled me aside in a coffee shop, her hands trembling as she whispered, "Your sister has done this before." The other women, one of them disappeared. What she showed me next made me realize I wasn't saving my sister's dream of having a family. I was about to become her next victim in a plan she'd been orchestrating since we were teenagers. But just before we move back to it, comment where you're watching from, and like, and subscribe for more stories. I never thought I'd be telling this story. Even now, months later, my hands shake when I think about how close I came to losing everything: my health, my future, maybe even my life. My name is Isla Monroe, and this is the story of how my sister's desperate plea for help revealed a darkness I never knew existed in our family. It started on an ordinary Tuesday night in March. I was in my small Portland apartment, working on a logo design for a local coffee shop. My rescue cat, Machi, was curled up on my desk, occasionally batting at my stylus pen. The rain tapped against the windows in that gentle northwest rhythm I'd grown to love. My life wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. 6 months had passed since I discovered my fiancé Nathan's gambling addiction and ended our engagement. I was finally feeling like myself again, creating art, taking on new clients, rebuilding my savings. Then my phone rang at 11 p.m. I almost didn't answer. Grace never called this late. My older sister lived by a strict schedule, up at 5 a.m. for yoga, in the office by 7, home by 8 p.m. for a glass of wine and case review. She was a senior associate at Whitfield, Barnes & Associates, Portland's most prestigious law firm. Everything in Grace's life ran like clockwork. "Isla." Her voice was thick, strangled. "I need you." My stomach dropped. The last time I'd heard Grace cry was 8 years ago, at Dad's funeral. Even then, she'd maintained her composure during the service, only breaking down afterward in the car. "Grace, what's wrong? Are you hurt? Is Daniel okay?" Daniel was her husband, an investment banker who worked even longer hours than she did. They lived in a massive house in the West Hills, all glass and modern angles, the kind of place that looked more like an art installation than a home. "Can you?" She paused, and I heard her take a shuddering breath. "Can I come over? Please? I know it's late, but I can't do this alone." "Of course." "Grace, you're scaring me. What happened?" "I'll explain when I get there." 20 minutes. She hung up before I could respond. I spent those 20 minutes pacing my apartment, imagination running wild. Was Daniel leaving her? Had someone died? Been diagnosed with something terrible? Grace and I weren't particularly close. We loved each other, but in that obligatory way of sisters who'd taken different paths. She'd been Mom's golden child. Straight A's, Harvard Law, the perfect husband, the perfect house. I'd been the disappointment. Art school dropout, freelance career that Mom never understood, a series of relationships she deemed unsuitable. Mom had been dead for 3 years now, but I still felt her disapproval like a weight on my shoulders. Grace had delivered the eulogy at her funeral, of course. I'd stood in the background, feeling like an imposter in my own family's grief. The knock came exactly 20 minutes later. Grace stood in my doorway, and I barely recognized her. Her usually perfect makeup was smeared, leaving dark rivulets down her cheeks. Her designer suit was wrinkled, her silk blouse untucked. She looked devastated, destroyed, completely unlike the composed attorney who commanded courtrooms. "Oh, Isla," she whispered, and then she was in my arms, sobbing against my shoulder. I guided her to my second-hand couch, the one she'd wrinkled her nose at when she'd helped me move in 2 years ago. Now she collapsed onto it like it was a life raft. I made her tea, chamomile, the same kind Mom used to make when we were upset as children. Grace held the mug with both hands, staring into it like it might hold answers. "It's over," she finally said. "Everything I've worked for, everything I've planned, it's over." "What's over?" "Grace, please talk to me." She looked up, and the devastation in her eyes made my chest tighten. We can't have children. I can't have children. 7 rounds of IVF, Isla.
7.
We've spent everything, our savings, Daniel's bonuses, my partnership advance. And today the doctor told me my egg reserve is completely depleted. Premature ovarian failure, he called it. Like I'm some kind of machine that's broken down. I reached for her hand. It was cold, trembling. Oh, Grace. I'm so sorry. 5 years, she continued, her voice rising. 5 years of hormones and procedures and hope and disappointment. Do you know what it's like to fail at the one thing that should be natural? The one thing our bodies are supposedly designed to do. I didn't know. At 28, children were still an abstract concept for me, something for someday that felt very far away. But I could see the pain in my sister's face, the way this had hollowed her out. The adoption waitlists are 3 to 5 years, she said. And after everything we've spent on IVF, we can't afford surrogacy. International adoption is basically impossible now with the new regulations. And I'm 34, Isla. By the time we get through an adoption process, I'll be almost 40. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table. She glanced at it, and something flickered across her face. Irritation? Fear? She flipped it face down. Where's Daniel? I asked. Shouldn't he be with you for this? He's processing, she said quickly. You know how he is with emotional things. He needed space to think. That seemed odd. Daniel had always struck me as supportive, maybe overly so. At family dinners, he'd always been the one refilling Grace's wine glass, rubbing her shoulders, asking if she needed anything. But then, I didn't really know their marriage. Grace kept that part of her life carefully compartmentalized. She was looking at me now with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. I recognized that look. It was the same one she'd worn in high school when she was about to ask for something big. Like when she needed me to lie to Mom about where she'd been the night she snuck out to a college party. Or when she wanted me to turn down art school so Mom wouldn't be disappointed in both of us. Isla, she said slowly, I need to ask you something. Something huge. And I need you to really think about it before you say no. My stomach tightened. Okay. I need your eggs. The words hung in the air between us. I stared at her, sure I'd misheard. My what? Your eggs. For IVF. You're young, healthy. We're sisters. The baby would still be partly me, genetically. It's our only chance, Isla. Our only chance to have a family. I pulled my hand back. Grace, that's huge. I don't know if I could. Please. She grabbed my hands, holding them tight. Please, just think about it. I know it's a lot to ask. I know it's not fair. But you're my sister. My only sister. And this is my last chance at being a mother. Her phone buzzed again. And again. She didn't even glance at it this time. Her eyes locked on mine. Grace, the hormones, the procedures. And what about later? Seeing a child at every family gathering who's biologically mine but not mine? That's complicated, that's. It wouldn't be weird, she said quickly. The child would only know you as Aunt Isla. We'd never tell them. It would be our secret, just between us. And I'd make sure you were compensated for everything. The time off work, the medical procedures, everything. That stung. I don't want your money, Grace. I know. That's not what I meant. She was crying again now, silent tears sliding down her cheeks. Do you remember when Nathan's gambling came out?
Who was there for you?
Who paid your rent when you couldn't work because you were so depressed? Who covered your student loans so they wouldn't go into default? The guilt hit like a physical blow. She was right. Grace had saved me during the worst period of my life. She'd been the one to hire the private investigator who'd uncovered Nathan's debts. She'd been the one to help me move out, to set me up in this apartment, to make sure I didn't lose everything. That's not fair, I whispered. I know it's not. None of this is fair. But I'm desperate, Isla. I'm drowning. She reached into her purse and pulled out something that made my breath catch. Our mother's pearl necklace. The one she'd worn every Sunday to church. The one she'd promised to pass down to her first granddaughter. Mom would be devastated. Grace said softly, running her fingers over the pearls. To know the family line might end with us. She wanted grandchildren so badly. Remember how she used to talk about it? How she'd teach them to garden, to bake her famous apple pie. The guilt was suffocating now. Mom had always made it clear that I disappointed her, dropping out of college, pursuing art, dating men she deemed unsuitable. Maybe this was my chance to finally do something right by our family, even if Mom wasn't here to see it. I need time to think, I said. Of course. Of course. Grace wiped her eyes, suddenly looking more like herself. There's a consultation appointment at the Prestige Fertility Center in 2 weeks. Just come with me. Just hear what they have to say. That's all I'm asking.
Her phone buzzed again.
This time, she grabbed it, and her face went pale. I have to go, she said abruptly, standing up. Grace, wait. We should talk more about. Daniel's texting. He needs me home. She hugged me, tighter than she had in years. Just think about it, Isla.
Please.
You're saving my life. You're saving our family. And then she was gone, leaving me alone with my swirling thoughts and the lingering scent of her expensive perfume. I sat on my couch for hours that night, staring at nothing, feeling the weight of family obligations settling on my shoulders like a familiar shroud. 2 weeks later, I found myself walking into the Prestige Fertility Center, my thrift store dress feeling shabby against the marble and glass opulence. Grace was already there, back in her armor, a perfectly pressed power suit, every hair in place. The broken woman from my couch had vanished, replaced by the sister I recognized. Controlled, composed, commanding. You came, she breathed, relief flooding her face. I said I would. The clinic was intimidating in its perfection. Everything was white and chrome like a space station or an expensive spa. The receptionist had that particular brand of beauty that seemed medical, flawless skin, perfect teeth, an ageless quality that spoke of excellent genes or excellent doctors. The Whitfield appointment, Grace said. Dr. Brennan is expecting us. I noticed she didn't use my name, just hers. Already, I was being erased from my own story. Dr. Harold Brennan appeared within minutes, which seemed unusual. Weren't doctors always running late? He was in his 50s, silver-haired, with the kind of tan that came from golf courses rather than beaches. His handshake was firm, his smile practiced. Grace, he said warmly, touching her shoulder in a way that seemed too familiar. So wonderful to see you again. And this must be your sister. He barely looked at me as he said it, his attention focused on Grace like she was the only person in the room. But then his eyes flicked to me, and something in his expression made me uncomfortable. The family resemblance is striking, he said. Very striking indeed. We were ushered into his office, all leather and dark wood, diplomas covering one wall. Grace sat forward in her chair, eager. I hung back, uncertain. I've reviewed your files, Dr. Brennan said, though I noticed he was looking at Grace, not me. Everything looks very promising. Your sister is an ideal candidate, young, healthy, similar genetic profile. We could begin the hormone protocol immediately.
Wait, I said.
Don't we need to discuss things first? The risks, the process. He waved his hand dismissively. All standard, all very safe. Grace has the paperwork prepared. Grace pulled out a thick folder, sliding it across to me. I've filled out most of it, she said. Just need your signatures. I opened the folder. The documents were dense with medical and legal jargon. Consent forms, waivers, agreements I couldn't begin to understand. I need time to read these. Grace checked her phone. I have a deposition at noon. Can't you just sign them? I've reviewed everything. It's all standard. Grace, these are legal documents about my body. I'm reading them. Dr. Brennan and Grace exchanged a look I couldn't interpret. Where's Daniel? I asked suddenly. Shouldn't he be here for this? Emergency meeting in New York, Grace said quickly. He'll be back next week. Dr. Brennan shifted in his chair. We'll need his sample when he returns, of course. Something about the way he said it, the way Grace's jaw tightened slightly, made me wonder if Daniel even knew about this appointment. Now, Dr. Brennan continued, We'll need to do a physical examination today, get your baseline hormones, start you on the stimulation protocol. The faster we move, the better the chances of success. Today, I felt railroaded. I haven't even agreed to anything yet. But you're here, Grace said, and there was something desperate in her voice.
Isla, please.
Every day we wait is a day wasted. I'm not getting any younger. A knock on the door interrupted us. A woman entered, mid-30s, professional blazer, nervous smile. I'm Kelly Harper, the fertility counselor. I'll need to meet with Isla privately before we proceed. It's protocol. Grace's face darkened. Is that really necessary? We're sisters. We've discussed everything. It's required, Kelly said, and I noticed her hands were trembling slightly. She was afraid of something. Or someone. Fine, Grace said curtly. When? I have an opening next week, Kelly said, looking directly at me for the first time. Tuesday at 2 p.m. Would that work, Isla? I nodded, grateful for the reprieve. But Grace wasn't done. We should at least do the physical exam today, she insisted. And start the hormones. We can't afford to waste a cycle. Before I could protest, I was whisked away by a nurse to an examination room. The nurse, Monica, was friendly but seemed distracted. As she took my blood pressure, she said something odd. You're the second Monroe sister we've seen this month for donation screening. My blood went cold. I only have one sister. Monica's face flushed.
Oh,
I must be mixing up files. Sorry, it's been a long day. But her eyes darted nervously, and I knew she wasn't confused at all. She was trying to tell me something. The physical exam was thorough, invasive. They took what seemed like dozens of vials of blood. Through it all, I could hear Grace's voice from the hallway, talking rapidly on her phone. I caught fragments, procedural delays, and legal ramifications, and once, clearly, she has to do this. When I returned to Dr. Brennan's office, Grace had papers spread across his desk. I glimpsed what looked like my medical history, but some of it was wrong, dates that didn't match, procedures I'd never had. Everything looks perfect, Dr. Brennan announced. We can begin immediately. I've prepared an aggressive protocol to maximize egg retrieval. Aggressive? I questioned. Perfectly safe, he assured me, but his eyes didn't meet mine. Grace has already procured the medications. We can administer the first injection now.
Now.
I felt like I was drowning. I haven't agreed to anything.
Isla.
Grace's voice was soft, pleading.
Please.
Every day matters. The medications are expensive. I've already paid for them.
Tires-tu en dollars, Isla?
Because I believe in this. Because I believe in us.
Tires-tu en dollars? Cash.
From someone who claimed to be bankrupt from IVF treatments. The inconsistency nagged at me, but Grace was already guiding me to the injection room. Just the first shot, she pleaded. Just to get things started while you think about it.
Please, Isla. For me.
For our family. For Mom. The nurse prepared the syringe. Grace held my hand, her grip surprisingly strong. As the needle went in, she raised her phone. Smile, she said, taking a photo. I want to document this gift you're giving me. Her expression as she looked at the photo was intense, possessive, almost hungry. It was an expression I'd never seen on my sister's face before, and it chilled me to my core. As we left the clinic, my arms sore from the injection, my head spinning from the rapid pace of everything, Grace hugged me. You won't regret this, she whispered. This baby will heal everything broken between us. You'll see. But sitting in my car afterward, watching her drive away in her Tesla, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just made a terrible mistake. The injection site throbbed, a constant reminder that something had already been set in motion, something I didn't fully understand. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Be careful. Things at Prestige aren't what they seem. Monica, I realized. The nurse. I looked back at the clinic, all that glass and marble gleaming in the afternoon sun, and wondered what I'd just walked into. What my sister had dragged me into. And whether I'd be able to walk back out. 3 days into the hormone protocol, I felt like my body was betraying me. The headaches started on day 2, sharp, stabbing pains behind my eyes that no amount of ibuprofen could touch. My abdomen felt swollen, tender. Grace texted me constantly, asking how I felt, reminding me to take the injections at exactly the right time. Her messages had an urgency that seemed disproportionate to the situation. Remember, 7 p.m. exactly. Not 6:55, not 7:05. Precision matters. I was sitting in my apartment, preparing for the evening injection, when my phone buzzed with a text from Kelly Harper, the fertility counselor. Can we meet tomorrow? Not at the clinic. Grounded coffee on Division, 10 a.m. It's important. The message felt clandestine, dangerous even. Why not at the clinic? I agreed, curiosity overriding my growing discomfort. The next morning, I arrived at the coffee shop 15 minutes early, choosing a table where I could watch the door. Kelly Harper arrived exactly at 10, but she didn't come straight to my table. Instead, she stood at the entrance for a moment, scanning the street behind her. When she finally approached, she chose the seat that gave her a view of both the entrance and the windows. "Thank you for coming," she said, her voice low. "I'm taking a huge risk meeting you like this."
Why?
"What's going on?" She pulled out a tablet, shielding it with her body, so only I could see the screen. "I've been reviewing your family's files. Grace has been a patient at Prestige for 7 years, not 5 like she told you. Maybe she miscounted. Isla, she's not there for infertility treatment. Never has been." Kelly's fingers moved across the screen, pulling up documents. "See this red sticker on her file? It means psychological monitoring required. We only use that for patients with documented mental health concerns that could affect treatment outcomes." My stomach dropped. What kind of concerns? I can't access the full psychiatric records, they're sealed. But I found something else. She pulled up another screen. "Grace has attempted to get eggs from 3 other donors before you. All of them withdrew at the last minute. Each one filed complaints about feeling manipulated and unsafe." "Who were they?" "The names are redacted, but I can tell you they were all women in their 20s, all with financial vulnerabilities. One was a single mother struggling with debt. Another was a college student about to lose her scholarship. The third..." Kelly paused. "The third disappeared after filing her complaint. No forwarding address, no phone number. Just gone." My hands were shaking as I reached for my coffee. "You're saying my sister is what? Dangerous?" Kelly leaned forward. "I'm saying there's a pattern here that goes beyond desperation for a baby. Look at this." She showed me another document. 2 years ago, Daniel, her husband, filed for legal separation. The grounds were reproductive coercion and psychological abuse. But they're still married. He was just in New York for business. Isla, Daniel hasn't been to the clinic in 18 months. I checked the visitor logs, the sample records, everything. Whatever Grace is telling you about his involvement is a lie." The coffee shop suddenly felt too small, too exposed. I looked around, half expecting to see Grace, watching us from another table. "There's more," Kelly continued. "Your mother's medical history. Did Grace ever tell you about the genetic testing she had done?" I shook my head. "Your mother was a carrier for Huntington's disease. It's a degenerative neurological condition that manifests in early childhood when both parents are carriers. Grace tested positive as a carrier 7 years ago. When Daniel tested positive too, their chances of having a healthy biological child together became effectively 0, 25% chance the child would have the disease. That's when Grace started pursuing egg donation. She never told me any of this." "Of course not. Because this isn't about having a baby anymore if it ever was. This is about control. About winning. About taking what she thinks she deserves." Kelly glanced at her watch nervously. "I have more to show you, but first, have you noticed any unusual symptoms from the hormones?" "Headaches, bloating, some nausea. Grace says it's normal." Kelly's face went pale. "The protocol she has you on, I reviewed it last night. It's not standard. It's an experimental high-yield extraction protocol meant for cancer patients who need to preserve eggs before chemotherapy. The hormone levels are 3 times normal. It could cause permanent damage to your ovaries, maybe even ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome. which can be fatal. Fatal. The word came out as a whisper. Grace wrote the legal disclaimers for this protocol herself. She knew exactly what she was putting you on. Kelly pulled up another document. And there's an insurance claim investigation. Someone's been filing claims under your name for fertility treatments you never received. The payments were going to an account that traces back to a shell company Grace created. She's been stealing from me? She's been stealing from insurance companies, using your identity. That's federal fraud. Kelly looked around again, then back at me. There's something else. The nurse, Monica, she tried to warn another donor last year. Grace had her almost fired, threatened to destroy her career. The comment about seeing another Monroe sister? That was Monica trying to warn you, without violating her NDA. My phone buzzed.
Grace.
How are you feeling? Remember, injection at 2 p.m. today. I can come help if you need. I showed Kelly the message. She grabbed my hand. Stop taking the hormones.
Today. Right now.
Get a lawyer, not one from Grace's firm, obviously. Document everything. And Isla. She stood up, gathering her things. Be careful. I don't know what Grace is capable of, but the other women who crossed her, things happened to them. Lost jobs, ruined credit, leaked personal information. One woman's ex-husband suddenly got full custody of her kids after anonymous tips about her mental instability. As Kelly prepared to leave, she noticed something outside and froze. Black Audi, across the street. Is that? I looked. It was Grace's assistant's car. Kelly ducked down, pulling her hood up. I have to go. If Grace finds out I talked to you. She didn't finish the sentence. Call me if you need help, but use a different phone. And Isla? Dr. Brennan is in on this. Grace's firm is representing him in a medical board investigation. She's blackmailing him. That's why he's going along with all of this. She slipped out the back entrance, leaving me alone with the devastating truth about my sister. I went home and immediately stopped the hormones. The relief I expected didn't come. Instead, the symptoms got worse. By that evening, I was vomiting, my vision blurring. I called an urgent care clinic across town, not wanting to risk anywhere Grace might have connections. The doctor there, a young woman named Dr. Patel, was horrified when she saw my hormone levels. These levels are dangerous, she said. You're showing signs of ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome. Who prescribed this protocol? I couldn't bring myself to say my sister tried to poison me. It's complicated. You need to stop immediately. These levels could cause permanent damage, maybe even organ failure. I'm going to prescribe some medications to help your body regulate, but if the symptoms get worse, go to the ER immediately. That night, I lay in bed, feeling like my body was on fire from the inside. Grace called 6 times. I didn't answer. Her texts grew increasingly frantic. Isla, where are you? You missed your injection time. This is important. Call me back. I'm coming over. I deadbolt my door and turned off all the lights, pretending I wasn't home. I heard her key in the lock. When had I given her a key? But the deadbolt held. She knocked, called my name, waited. Finally, after 20 minutes, she left. The next morning, I knew I needed answers. Real answers. And there was only one place to find them: Grace's house. I waited until Wednesday, when I knew she had court all day. Daniel was supposedly still in New York. I still had my spare key from when I'd house sat for them 2 years ago. My hands shook as I turned it in the lock, half expecting alarms to blare. The house was eerily quiet. More than quiet, abandoned. The living room looked perfect, staged like a magazine spread, but there was dust on the coffee table. In the kitchen, the refrigerator held only condiments and a bottle of wine. No real food. Nobody was living here, not really. I climbed the stairs to the master bedroom. Grace's side was pristine, clothes organized by color, shoes in clear boxes. Daniel's side was empty. Not just empty, cleaned out. The drawers were bare, the closet held only hangers. How long had he been gone? Down the hall, I found a locked door. It took me 20 minutes of searching to find the key, hidden inside a hollowed-out law textbook in Grace's home office. My hands trembled as I turned it. The room took my breath away.
It was a nursery.
But not just any nursery. This was enshrined to an imaginary child. The walls were painted soft yellow, with hand-stenciled butterflies dancing toward the ceiling. A white crib sat in the center, made up with expensive linens. The closet was full of baby clothes, organized by size from newborn to 2T, all with tags still on. Some of the receipts were 7 years old, but it was the walls that made my blood run cold. They were covered in charts, medical documents, fertility tracking spreadsheets dating back years. And photos. So many photos. Photos of me at different ages. My high school graduation, college years, recent ones from my Instagram. Each one had notes in Grace's handwriting. Good bone structure, healthy complexion, strong genetic markers. There was a photo from my engagement party to Nathan. Grace had circled my face and written, "Peak fertility window. Need to act soon." In the closet, behind the baby clothes, I found file boxes. Inside were journals, dozens of them, dating back 15 years. I opened one at random. May 15th, 2016. Isla's eggs are wasted on her. She doesn't understand their value. She throws away her fertility on that gambling addict while I, who would be the perfect mother, am left with nothing. It's not fair. It's not right. But I can fix this. I just need to make her understand she owes me. Another entry from last year. September 3rd. The Coleman woman was a disappointment. Inferior genes, despite her appearance. Had to cut losses. Isla is the only answer. She's always been the only answer. Mom would understand. Mom would want me to have what's mine.
Coleman.
Sarah Coleman, the third donor who had disappeared. I found a file labeled S. Coleman, failed investment. Inside were photos of a woman who looked unsettlingly like me, same build, same coloring. There were medical records, psychological evaluations, and then, at the bottom, a newspaper clipping. Local woman missing after family dispute. My phone rang, startling me so badly, I dropped the journal. It was Grace. "Court ended early," she said, and I could hear her car in the background. "I'm heading home. We need to talk about you missing your injections." She was maybe 10 minutes away. I grabbed as many journals as I could carry, took photos of everything else. As I was leaving the nursery, I noticed a letter on the changing table, addressed to Grace from Daniel. It was dated 6 months ago. "Grace, I can't do this anymore. Your obsession has destroyed us. I never wanted children, you knew this when we married. The vasectomy I had before we met was not a betrayal, it was honesty you chose to ignore. I've been patient through your increasingly erratic behavior, but when you drugged me to try to extract sperm, you crossed a line. I'm staying in New York permanently. The divorce papers will come from my lawyer. Don't contact me again. Daniel." I heard the garage door opening. I ran down the stairs, my arms full of evidence, heart pounding. The front door was my only option. I fumbled with the lock, hearing Grace's car door slam. The deadbolt finally turned, and I burst out onto the porch just as Grace was coming up the walkway. She stopped, her eyes taking in the journals in my arms, the papers spilling onto the ground. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then her face transformed, the mask of composure shattering completely. "You broke into my house?" Her voice was deadly quiet. "You've been lying to me. About everything. Daniel's gone. The Coleman woman. What did you do to her?" Grace laughed, but it was a sound without humor. Sarah Coleman was a mistake. Weak genetics, weaker mind. She couldn't handle the pressure of perfection. Not like you, Isla. You're strong. Your family. You're mine. I'm not yours, Grace. I'm not your property. She moved toward me, and I instinctively stepped back. Everything I've done has been for us. For our family. Don't you see? This baby will fix everything. It will heal the damage Mom did when she made us compete. It will prove I'm worthy of love. Grace, you need help. Professional help.
No.
She lunged forward, grabbing my arm with surprising strength. Her nails dug into my skin. You don't get to leave. Not after everything I've invested. Do you know what I've sacrificed? My marriage, my career advancement, everything. I've been planning this for years. Years, Isla. I tried to pull away, but her grip tightened. Let go, Grace. You owe me, she hissed. For every time I was perfect while you got to be the artist. For every time Mom compared us and found you charming while I was just expected to achieve. For every time Dad looked at your paintings with pride while my law degree was just assumed.
Dad.
Something cold washed over me. Grace, Dad's dead. He died 8 years ago. She laughed again, manic now. Is that what you think?
Oh, Isla. Sweet, naive Isla.
Dad's not dead. He's at Willowbrook Memory Care, has been for 3 years. I've been managing his assets, making sure his money goes where it's needed. The death certificate was surprisingly easy to fake with the right connections. The ground seemed to shift under my feet. You're insane.
I am practical.
She screamed, shaking me. I do what needs to be done. And what needs to be done now is for you to give me what's mine. Those eggs belong to our family legacy, not to you. You'll waste them like you waste everything. I wrenched my arm free, leaving scratches from her nails, and ran to my car. She followed, still screaming. I have legal documents, Isla. I can prove you're mentally unstable from the hormones. I can have you committed. I can destroy your pathetic little career with one phone call. You think anyone will hire a graphic designer who's been institutionalized? I threw the journals into my car and locked the doors just as she reached me. She pounded on the windows, her face contorted with rage. I know about Nathan's real problem, she shouted. It wasn't just gambling. There were drugs too. And underage girls at those casino parties. I have photos. Evidence I've been saving. I can destroy him, and everyone will think you knew. You enabled him. I started the car, but she threw herself onto the hood. You're not leaving. Not with my property. I put the car in reverse, moving slowly. She slid off, landing on her designer heels. In my rearview mirror, I saw her standing in the driveway, pulling out her phone. My phone immediately started ringing. I ignored it. Instead, I called Kelly Harper.
Isla?
Are you okay? She's completely lost it.
She attacked me.
And Kelly, my father's not dead. She's been keeping him in a memory care facility, drugging him, stealing his money. Oh my God. Where are you now? Driving. I have evidence, journals, documents. She admitted to everything. You need to go to the police.
Now.
I will, but my phone beeped with another call. She's calling from the clinic number. Don't answer. Actually, can you come to my apartment? We need to document your injuries, get everything on record before. The call dropped. I looked at my phone. Grace had somehow remotely disabled it. The screen was black, unresponsive. I drove to Kelly's apartment complex, constantly checking my mirrors for Grace's Audi. Kelly was waiting in the parking lot, and she gasped when she saw my arm. We need to photograph these injuries, she said, leading me inside. And call the police from my phone. But as she reached for her phone, it rang. Dr. Brennan's name appeared on the screen. Don't answer, I said. I have to. If I don't, I'll lose my job. She put it on speaker. Kelly, Dr. Brennan's voice was tight. We have a situation. Grace Whitfield has checked herself in for an emergency retrieval procedure. She says her sister has had a psychotic break and gave full consent before becoming violent. She has documentation. Kelly and I looked at each other in horror. That's impossible, Kelly said. Isla's right here with me. There was a pause. Then you both need to get to the clinic immediately. She's already in pre-op. If she's using forged consent forms, we need to stop this before. The line went dead. Kelly grabbed her keys. We have to go.
Now.
She's going to try to harvest her own eggs and claim they're yours. With forged documents and Brennan under her thumb, she might actually get away with it. As we ran to her car, I saw a black Audi pulling into the complex. Not Grace's, her assistant's. They're watching us, I said. Let them watch, Kelly said, starting the engine. We're about to expose everything. But even as we raced toward the clinic, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were already too late. Grace had been planning this for years, and I'd only just discovered the game she was playing. The worst part was the sinking realization that everything, my ex-fiancé's exposure, my struggling business, my isolation, had all been orchestrated by the one person I should have been able to trust. My sister. My blood. My perfect, psychotic sister who believed she owned me, down to my very DNA. Kelly drove like our lives depended on it, which maybe they did. Her knuckles were white on the steering wheel as she wove through Portland traffic, running yellow lights and taking corners too fast. I gripped the door handle, Grace's journal scattered across my lap, my arms still bleeding from where her nails had broken skin. She can't really do this, can she? I asked. Use my identity for a medical procedure? She's a lawyer with forged documents and a doctor she's blackmailing, Kelly said, swerving around a slow-moving truck. She's absolutely capable of it. The question is whether we can stop her in time. My mind was racing, trying to process everything. You said she checked herself in for an emergency retrieval. But I haven't been taking the hormones for days. The timing doesn't make sense. Kelly's face was grim. Unless she's been taking them herself. Isla, the hormone protocol she had you on, someone with medical knowledge could self-administer it. If she's been preparing her own body while setting you up, the implications hit me like a physical blow. She was never planning to use my eggs. She was going to harvest her own and claim they were mine. With forged consent forms saying you donated them, she'd have legal claim to the embryos. She could use donor sperm, carry the baby herself, and you'd have no recourse. On paper, you gave up all rights. I tried calling 911 from Kelly's phone, but when I explained the situation, the operator sounded skeptical. Ma'am, are you saying someone is impersonating you at a medical facility?
Yes.
My sister, she's. I show we already have a report about this situation. A Grace Whitfield called earlier reporting that her sister Isla Monroe is having a mental health crisis related to fertility medications. She said you might make false accusations. Officers are already en route to do a welfare check. Kelly grabbed the phone from me. This is Kelly Harper. I'm a licensed counselor at Prestige Fertility Center. Grace Whitfield is attempting to perform medical fraud. We need officers at the clinic, not a welfare check. Ma'am, I can only go by the information I have. If you'd like to file a counter-report, you can come to the station. Kelly hung up in frustration. She's thought of everything. We were 5 minutes from the clinic when my borrowed phone rang. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Isla? The voice was weak, confused, but familiar. So familiar it made my chest ache.
Dad.
They told me you were dead, he whispered. Both of you. Car accident. But the nice nurse, she showed me the news on her phone. You're alive. Grace lied. Tears burned my eyes. Dad, where are you? Willowbrook Memory Care. Room 247. They keep me sedated, but Maria, the night nurse, she's been lowering my doses. I'm starting to remember things. Terrible things Grace has done. We're gonna get you out. I promise. There's something you need to know. Grace isn't your only sister. Your mother had another daughter before you were born. Rebecca. She gave her up for adoption when she was 16. Grace found out years ago. She's been. The line went dead. Kelly pulled into the clinic's parking lot, tires screeching. We'll deal with that later. Right now, we need to stop Grace. We burst through the clinic doors. The receptionist, the same perfect one from my first visit, stood up in alarm. You can't be here, Dr. Brennan said. Where's Grace Whitfield? Kelly demanded. I can't share patient information. I slammed Grace's journal on the counter. This patient is committing fraud. Where is she? The receptionist's eyes widened as she saw Grace's handwriting, the obsessive plans. Before she could respond, Monica appeared from a side door. Thank God you're here, she said, glancing around nervously. I've been stalling, but Dr. Brennan is getting suspicious. Grace is in pre-op room 3. She's already partially sedated, but she's fighting it, demanding they proceed immediately. Can you get us in there?
Kelly asked.
Monica shook her head. Brennan revoked my access after I accidentally contaminated the first batch of surgical equipment. But I did something else. She pulled out her phone. I've been live streaming everything to the clinic's cloud server. Grace's rants, Brennan admitting he knows the consent forms are forged. It's all there. That's evidence, but it doesn't stop the procedure, I said. Monica smiled grimly. No, but this might. She led us to a staff computer and pulled up a file. Sarah Coleman didn't disappear. She's been working here under a different name, Sarah Mills. She's an orderly at Willowbrook Memory Care, the same facility where your father is being held. My blood ran cold. Grace placed her there? Or Sarah placed herself to gather evidence? She's been documenting everything for 2 years. Elder abuse, medical fraud, forged death certificates. She contacted the FBI last week. As if on cue, the clinic doors burst open again. Federal agents flooded in, weapons drawn, badges visible. Behind them, a woman I recognized from the photos in Grace's nursery, Sarah Coleman. Federal agents. Everyone freeze. The receptionist screamed. Dr. Brennan emerged from his office, face pale. Harold Brennan, the lead agent, said, "You're under arrest for medical fraud, conspiracy, and violation of federal healthcare laws." Wait, Brennan stammered. I was coerced. Grace Whitfield has evidence of my tax evasion. She threatened. We know, Sarah Coleman said, stepping forward. I've been recording everything for 2 years. Your confession just now was the last piece we needed. I grabbed Sarah's arm. My sister, she's in pre-op. Sarah's expression softened. We know. Agents are heading there now. We ran down the hallway, following the sound of Grace's raised voice. Through the observation window of pre-op room 3, I could see her on the gurney, partially sedated but fighting the medical staff. You don't understand, she was slurring. This is my last chance. My only chance. I've planned everything perfectly. An agent was trying to explain her rights while a nurse attempted to remove her for. Grace saw me through the window and her eyes blazed with fury and something else, desperation. Isla, she screamed. Tell them you promised. You owe me. You've always owed me. I entered the room, the agents allowing me through. Grace reached for me with trembling hands. Please, she whispered, and for a moment, she looked like my sister again. The one who'd taught me to ride a bike, who'd held me when our grandfather died. Please, Isla. I just wanted to be a mother. Is that so wrong? Not wrong, I said softly. But what you did to get there was. Her face contorted. Easy for you to say. You have everything. Youth, fertility, Dad's love. Did you know he has a painting you did in 3rd grade in his room? 3rd grade. None of my achievements are there. Just your stupid, childish art. Grace, I said, Dad's alive because of Sarah. She's been protecting him from you. Grace's eyes darted to Sarah, who stood in the doorway. You, she hissed. You were supposed to disappear. I did, Sarah said calmly. Right into the perfect position to document your crimes. 2 years, Grace. 2 years of recording your visits to your father, your threats to other residents, your financial fraud. I have everything. Grace started laughing, high and manic. You think you've won? You have no idea what I know. What I've hidden. Mom's first daughter, Rebecca. I destroyed her life. Anonymous harassment for years. She tried to kill herself last year. Did you know that? Our perfect hidden sister, the OBGYN who can't even have children of her own. The sedatives were taking effect now, her words becoming slurred. I found her when I was 25. Mom never knew. I made sure she suffered for being the first. For being the one Mom really wanted. She looked at me, eyes struggling to focus. There's more, she whispered. So much more. Under the nursery floorboards. Everything about you, Isla. Every man you dated that I paid to leave. Every job I sabotaged. Every friend I turned against you. I kept records. Insurance. Her eyes closed, and she mumbled one last thing. Check Mom's safety deposit box. Bank of America. I'm not the only monster in this family. The medical staff sedated her fully then, and the agents took over. I stood there, shaking as the magnitude of her confession sank in. My entire adult life had been orchestrated by my sister's invisible hand.
Kelly put her arm around me.
Come on, let's go find your father. The drive to Willowbrook Memory Care was a blur. Sarah Coleman, I couldn't think of her as Sarah Mills, rode with us, filling in the gaps. I was desperate when Grace found me, she said. Single mom, drowning in debt. The $50,000 she offered for egg donation seemed like salvation. But once I was in, the red flags were everywhere. The psychological manipulation, the illegal hormone protocols. When I tried to back out, she threatened my daughter. What did you do? I played dead. Let her think she'd won. Then I got the orderly job at Willowbrook. I knew she had to be hiding something there. She mentioned it once during a hormone-induced rant. Finding your father was an accident. He was lucid one day, recognized my voice from when Grace had brought me to your family home. He's really okay? Sarah smiled. More than okay. He's been playing possum for months, gathering evidence with Maria's help. Your father is sharp, Isla. He's been documenting everything. Willowbrook Memory Care looked like a prison disguised as a luxury hotel. Sarah badged us in, and we made our way to room 247. I knocked softly.
Come in.
The man in the bed was thinner than I remembered, grayer, but his eyes, those were my father's eyes, clear and intelligent and very much alive. Isla, he said, and I collapsed into his arms, sobbing. I thought you were dead. We had a funeral. I mourned you for 8 years. I know, sweetheart. I know. He held me tight, and I could feel him crying too. Grace told me you died in the accident with me. Told me your mother had died too. For years, I believed her. The drugs made everything foggy. Mom did die, I said. 3 years ago. Cancer. His face crumpled. I know. Maria showed me the obituary last month. I never got to say goodbye. Dad, what happened? How did she do this? He sighed, looking older than his 72 years. After your mother died, Grace insisted I move in with her. For my health, she said. She started giving me medication for anxiety, then depression, then memory issues. Each pill made me worse. By the time I realized what she was doing, I was too compromised to fight back. She had power of attorney. She controlled everything. But the death certificate? Forged. Like everything else Grace touches. He reached for a box under his bed. Maria and I have been collecting evidence. Bank statements showing Grace stealing my pension. Videos of her visits where she admits to keeping me drugged. And this. He pulled out a worn envelope. Your mother's confession. She gave it to me before she died, made me promise to give it to you and Grace together. I never got the chance. I opened it with trembling hands. My dear daughters, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and it's time you knew the truth. I had another daughter when I was 16. Rebecca. My parents forced me to give her up, threatened to disown me if I ever contacted her. The loss broke something in me that never healed. Grace, I pushed you so hard because I was terrified of losing you too. Every achievement was proof you wouldn't be taken away. Isla, I distanced myself from you because you reminded me of Rebecca, the same free spirit, the same artistic soul. I was a coward. I was a terrible mother to all 3 of you. I've left Rebecca's adoption records in my safety deposit box, along with letters I wrote but never sent. I pray someday you'll find each other and break this cycle of pain. All my love and regrets, Mom. I looked up to find Sarah recording everything on her phone. Evidence, she explained. Through the window, I saw federal agents arriving. One of them entered, the lead agent from the clinic. Mr. Monroe, we need your statement about the false death certificate and imprisonment. Dad nodded. I'll tell you everything. But first, I need to know, is Grace going to be okay? Even after everything, he was still her father. Still worried about his damaged daughter. She's in custody, the agent said. Psychiatric evaluation pending. The list of charges is extensive. Can you help us find Rebecca? I asked. Our other sister? The agent nodded. We've already located her. Dr. Rebecca Foster in Eugene. She's been receiving harassment for years from anonymous sources, We now know we're your sister. She's agreed to testify. The next few hours were a whirlwind. Dad gave his statement. Sarah provided 2 years of recordings. Kelly submitted the clinic's records. Monica turned over the live stream files. The scope of Grace's crimes was staggering: medical fraud, identity theft, elder abuse, false imprisonment, insurance fraud, conspiracy, attempted murder. As the sun set, I found myself in Dad's room with Sarah and Kelly. Dad was holding my hand, finally free from the drugs that had clouded his mind for years. "Grace called while you were with the agents," he said softly. "From the psychiatric ward." "What did she say?" "She asked if the baby would have been beautiful." He squeezed my hand. "She's sick, Isla. Has been for a long time. Your mother and I, we missed the signs. We failed her." "She made her choices, Dad."
Yes.
But mental illness complicated those choices. The prosecutor says she's looking at 45 years if convicted. She'll likely take a plea deal with psychiatric treatment. Sarah's phone buzzed. She looked at it and gasped. "Rebecca Foster just responded to my message. She's driving up from Eugene tonight. She wants to meet you both." I thought about the strange path that had led us here. 3 sisters, hidden from each other, manipulated by a fourth who was consumed by her own pain. Grace had orchestrated so much suffering, but in her twisted way, she'd also brought us together. "Grace's lawyer is here," Monica said from the doorway. "He says she wants to make a full confession in exchange for treatment instead of prison."
Let her, Dad said.
Maybe confession will be the first step toward healing. But I knew better. Grace's confession would be just another manipulation, another attempt at control. The real healing would come from those of us she'd hurt, finding each other in the wreckage of her obsession. That night, as I sat in Dad's room waiting for Rebecca to arrive, I pulled out one of Grace's journals. An entry from 10 years ago caught my eye. "Family is possession. Love is control. If I can't have their love freely, I'll take it by force. I'll make them need me so much they can never leave." That's what Mom did with her guilt. That's what I'll do with my power. We're all just trying to avoid abandonment in the end. I closed the journal, understanding finally that Grace's story was a tragedy of her own making. She'd been so afraid of being left behind that she'd pushed everyone away. In trying to control love, she'd destroyed it. Tomorrow, I would meet my eldest sister. Tomorrow, we would begin building something new from the ashes of Grace's empire. But tonight, I sat with my father, alive, free and mine again, and let myself grieve for the sister I'd lost long before I ever knew she was gone. The irony wasn't lost on me. Grace had wanted a baby to heal our broken family. Instead, her destruction had brought together the family she never knew existed, one built not on blood and obligation, but on survival and choice. In the end, that was the family that mattered. Sarah squeezed my shoulder. "Rebecca just texted. She's an hour away." I looked at my father, at Sarah who'd become an unexpected sister, at Kelly who'd risked everything to save me, at Monica who'd stood up to power. This was my family now. The one Grace had unknowingly created through her cruelty. "Let her come," I said. "We have a lot to talk about." Through the window, I could see the Portland skyline lighting up against the dark sky. Somewhere in that city, Grace was in a psychiatric ward, possibly sedated, definitely facing the consequences of years of manipulation. But here, in this room that had been a prison, we were free. The real story, I realized, wasn't about Grace at all. It was about what came after. How you rebuild when someone has systematically destroyed your life. How you learn to trust when family has betrayed you. How you create something beautiful from the ugliest truth. My phone, Kelly had gotten me a new one, buzzed with a message from the FBI agent. "Your sister's house has been searched. We found extensive documentation under the nursery floorboards as she indicated. You may want to prepare yourself." The scope of her surveillance and manipulation goes back 15 years. 15 years. Half my life orchestrated by a sister I thought I knew. Every failure, every loss, every moment of self-doubt potentially traced back to Grace's invisible hand. But as my father squeezed my hand, as Sarah showed me pictures of her daughter, who she'd fought so hard to protect, as Kelly pulled up resources for trauma counseling, I realized something Grace never understood. You can't control love. You can only receive it or reject it. And in trying to force it, Grace had rejected the very thing she'd wanted most. The door opened, and a woman walked in. She looked like our mother, the same eyes, the same way of carrying herself. But there was something else there too, a strength born from surviving years of anonymous torture. "I'm Rebecca," she said simply. "I hear we're sisters." I stood up, extending my hand.
I'm Isla.
"And this is our father, Thomas. We have a lot to tell you." Rebecca looked at each of us, then at the journals scattered on the bed, the evidence boxes, the FBI paperwork. "She really did all this? Our sister?" "She's sick," Dad said gently. "She has been for a long time." Rebecca nodded slowly. "The emails, the packages, the dead animals left at my clinic, that was all her?" "All her," Sarah confirmed. "I have the recordings to prove it." Rebecca sank into a chair. I thought I was going insane. The harassment was so specific, so personal. It knew things about me that no one should know. "She'd been watching you for years," I said. "We found surveillance photos, private investigator reports, even your medical records from when you were diagnosed as infertile." Rebecca's face hardened. She knew I couldn't have children and still sent me those messages saying I was a failure as a woman? She was projecting her own fears, Kelly said professionally. "It doesn't excuse it, but understanding the psychology might help with healing." Rebecca laughed bitterly. "Healing? I tried to kill myself 6 months ago." The messages had gotten so cruel, so relentless. They came from our dead mother's email address. The room fell silent. Dad reached for Rebecca's hand.
I'm sorry.
"I'm so sorry we couldn't protect you from her." "You were drugged and imprisoned," Rebecca said. "We were all her victims." "Not anymore," I said firmly. "Now we're survivors. And we're family, the real kind, where we choose to be here for each other." Rebecca looked at me, and I saw our mother in her eyes, not the cold, distant mother I'd known, but the teenager who'd been forced to give up her first child and never recovered. "Family," she repeated. "I've been alone for so long." "Not anymore," Sarah said. "If this experience has taught me anything, it's that family isn't about DNA. It's about who shows up when everything falls apart." As we sat there, 3 sisters united by trauma, a father freed from captivity, and the friends who'd become family, I thought about Grace alone in her psychiatric ward. She'd wanted so desperately to create a family, to control love, to fill the void our mother's coldness had left in all of us. But families aren't created through force or manipulation or control. They're built one choice at a time, one act of courage at a time, one moment of showing up at a time. Grace had never understood that. Maybe she never could. The night stretched on as we shared our stories, piecing together the full picture of Grace's manipulation. With each revelation, the web became clearer. A sister so damaged by our mother's emotional absence and impossible standards that she'd become a monster herself, perpetuating the cycle of pain she'd been trying to escape. By dawn, we had a plan. Rebecca would move to Portland temporarily, staying with Sarah while she testified. Dad would move in with me while we sorted through the legal mess of his resurrection. Kelly would help us all find appropriate therapy. Monica would testify about the medical fraud. And Grace? Grace would face justice, but more importantly, she would face treatment. Because despite everything she'd done, she was still my sister, still Dad's daughter, still a human being who'd lost her way so completely that she destroyed everything she'd claimed to love. As the sun rose over Portland, casting golden light through the windows of Willowbrook Memory Care, I realized that Grace's story was ending, but ours was just beginning. We were a strange family, bonded by trauma, but choosing to build something better. The real gift Grace had unknowingly given us wasn't the pain or the trauma, it was each other. In trying to possess us, she'd freed us. In trying to control us, she'd united us. In trying to create her perfect family, she destroyed herself, but given us the chance to create something real. And that, I thought as I watched my father smile at Rebecca for the first time in decades, was the most tragic irony of all. 6 months. That's how long it took for the full scope of Grace's crimes to be cataloged, documented, and prepared for trial. 6 months of depositions, evidence reviews, and psychiatric evaluations. 6 months of learning just how deep my sister's obsession had run. I sat in the federal courthouse in downtown Portland, my hands folded in my lap, watching as they brought Grace in. She'd lost weight, her designer suits replaced by a simple gray dress. But her eyes, those were still the same. Sharp, calculating, scanning the room until they found me. She smiled. It wasn't the manic smile from her breakdown at the clinic. This was controlled, measured. She'd been preparing for this moment. The show was about to begin. The United States versus Grace Whitfield, the clerk announced. Charges include medical fraud, identity theft, elder abuse, false imprisonment, attempted murder, and violations of the RICO Act.
RICO.
The Racketeering Act. Because Grace hadn't just committed crimes, she'd run a criminal enterprise, using her law firm's resources to forge documents, intimidate witnesses, and operate what amounted to a fraud ring spanning multiple states. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Jennifer Huang, had explained it to me. Your sister didn't just hurt you. She created a system designed to hurt anyone who had what she wanted. Now, sitting in the witness preparation room, Jennifer reviewed my testimony one more time. Remember, she said, Grace's defense team will try to paint her as a victim of mental illness and childhood trauma. They'll bring up your mother's emotional distance, the pressure to be perfect. Don't engage with that narrative. Stick to the facts of what she did to you. All rise, the bailiff called, and Judge Patricia Reeves entered. She was known for being tough but fair, particularly in cases involving women's healthcare fraud. Grace's defense attorney, Marcus Whitman, someone from outside her firm, since they'd all abandoned her, stood up. Your Honor, we'd like to enter a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity. The gallery erupted in whispers. I felt Rebecca's hand grip mine. She'd flown in from Eugene, closing her practice temporarily to be here. On my other side sat our father, finally looking healthy after months of proper care. Ms. Whitfield, the judge said, do you understand the plea your attorney has entered? Grace stood, and her voice was clear, confident. I understand perfectly, Your Honor. My actions were the result of a psychotic break caused by fertility medications and undiagnosed personality disorders stemming from childhood trauma. It was perfectly delivered. The victim, not the perpetrator. Jennifer Huang stood. Your Honor, the prosecution has evidence that Ms. Whitfield's crimes were methodical, planned over 15 years, and executed with full knowledge of their illegality. This was not insanity. This was calculated cruelty. The trial began. The first week was medical testimony. Dr. Brennan, wearing an orange jumpsuit and testifying as part of his plea deal, detailed how Grace had blackmailed him. She had evidence of my tax evasion, he said, not meeting anyone's eyes. But more than that, she had photos, fabricated but convincing, that could have destroyed my marriage. She said if I didn't cooperate with the egg retrieval scheme, she'd release everything. And you knew the consent forms were forged? Jennifer asked.
Yes.
She showed me how she'd done it, actually. Seemed proud of her work. Said her legal training made her an expert at document creation. Grace's attorney tried to spin it. Isn't it true that Ms. Whitfield was taking the same dangerous hormones she prescribed for her sister? Wouldn't that affect her judgment? She started those only in the last month, Dr. Brennan replied. The planning went back years. Then came Sarah Coleman's testimony. She walked to the stand with quiet dignity, her 2 years of undercover work finally being revealed. Ms. Coleman, Jennifer began, can you describe your first interaction with Grace Whitfield? She found me through a single mother's support group online. I'd posted about my financial struggles. She private messaged me, offering $50,000 for egg donation. It seemed like a miracle. What happened when you tried to withdraw from the agreement? Sarah's voice stayed steady. She threatened to call Child Protective Services with anonymous tips about drug use, which was false. She said she had connections who could take my daughter away. She also threatened to expose a juvenile record I'd had expunged. How did she know about that? She'd hired a private investigator. She had a file on me inches thick. Every mistake I'd ever made. Every vulnerability. The defense tried again, but Ms. Whitfield never actually harmed you, did she? Sarah looked directly at Grace. She tried to poison me when she found out I'd lied about my family medical history. The vitamin injection she gave me caused liver damage I'm still recovering from. The gallery gasped. This was new information, not in the original charges. Grace's face remained impassive, but I saw her hands clench. My testimony came on day 3. As I walked to the stand, Grace leaned forward, her eyes locked on mine. I could almost hear her thoughts. Remember, you owe me. I made you who you are. Ms. Monroe, Jennifer began gently, can you describe your relationship with your sister before these events? We were distant but loving. She was the successful one, the one who took care of things. I trusted her completely. When did she first approach you about egg donation? I told the story. The late-night visit, the tears, the manipulation using our dead mother's memory. But it was when Jennifer showed the evidence from Grace's journals that the courtroom really reacted. On the screen appeared page after page of my sister's handwriting. Isla's eggs are wasted on her. She owes me for years of covering her failures. If I can't have my own child, I'll have hers. It's only fair. Started sabotaging her freelance work today. 3 client complaints should make her desperate enough to need my money. Ms. Monroe, Jennifer said, were you aware your sister was sabotaging your career? Not until we found these journals. I thought I was just failing. The defense attorney stood for a cross-examination. Ms. Monroe, isn't it true you were grateful for your sister's financial help over the years? Yes, but... And isn't it true that you initially agreed to the egg donation? Under false pretenses. But you agreed. You took the first injection willingly. I felt my temper rise. She lied about everything. Our father being dead, her husband's involvement, the safety of the procedures. But you could have researched these things yourself, couldn't you? Jennifer objected, and the judge sustained it, but the damage was done. The defense was painting me as someone who should have known better. Rebecca's testimony was devastating. She described years of anonymous harassment, the suicide attempt, the way it had destroyed her career and relationships. The messages came from our mother's email address, she said, tears streaming down her face. They contained details only family would know. They said I was the mistake that ruined everything, that Mom never wanted me, that I should finish what I'd started with the pills. Even Grace's attorney looked uncomfortable cross-examining a suicide survivor. But the most powerful testimony came from our father. Thomas Monroe, 72 years old, walked slowly to the stand. The man who'd been drugged into submission for 3 years, declared dead by his own daughter, told a story with quiet dignity. She started the medication slowly, he said. First for grief after my wife died. Then for anxiety. Then for confusion I didn't have until the pills created it. Within a year, I couldn't trust my own mind. Mr. Monroe, Jennifer asked, do you remember Grace visiting you at Willowbrook? Every week. She'd increase my medications before each visit. I have videos. Maria, my nurse, helped me record them on a hidden phone. The prosecution played one. Grace's voice, clear and casual. The Ativan is working perfectly. He doesn't even remember Isla exists. Another few months, and I can have him declared legally incompetent. The estate will be mine to manage properly. In the video, my father's voice slurred. Isla, where's Isla?
Dead, Dad.
Remember? The car accident. Now take your pills. The courtroom was silent. Several jurors were crying. Mr. Monroe, the defense attorney said carefully, you love your daughter Grace, don't you? I love who she was before the sickness took over. But the woman who did these things? I don't know her. The defense's case relied heavily on psychiatric testimony. Dr. Patricia Vance, a respected psychiatrist, testified that Grace showed signs of narcissistic personality disorder with psychotic features, exacerbated by fertility medications. Ms. Whitfield's actions, while criminal stem from severe mental illness rooted in childhood trauma. Her mother's emotional abandonment, the pressure to be perfect, the discovery of a hidden sister, these created a perfect storm of psychological damage. It was compelling. For a moment, even I felt sympathy for Grace. But Jennifer's rebuttal was devastating. She presented Grace's practice journals from when she was 16, detailed plans for controlling family members, written years before any fertility issues. This wasn't mental illness causing crimes, Jennifer argued. This was a criminal who happened to also be mentally ill. Then came the moment that changed everything. Grace suddenly stood up. "I want to testify." Her attorney looked horrified. "Your Honor, I need to consult with my client." "I know my rights," Grace said calmly. "I want to tell my side." Judge Reeves called a recess. When we returned, Grace was on the stand. She looked directly at me as she began. "Everything I did was for love." The prosecutor approached carefully. "Ms. Whitfield, you've pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. Are you saying you didn't know your actions were wrong?" "I knew they were illegal, but they weren't wrong. Isla wasted her fertility on men who didn't deserve her. Our father loved her art more than my achievements. Rebecca got to be Mom's secret regret while I had to be her public perfection. I was just balancing the scales." "So, you admit to the crimes?" "I admit to taking what was mine." Grace's composure cracked slightly. "Do you know what it's like to be perfect? To never make mistakes because one failure means you're not worthy of love? I earned that baby through years of being everything everyone wanted. Isla got love for free, just for existing. That baby was my payment." The courtroom was stunned. Even her attorney put his head in his hands. "Ms. Whitfield," Jennifer pressed, "are you saying you believe you had a right to steal your sister's eggs?" "I'm saying," Grace's voice rose, "that family is about sacrifice. I sacrificed everything for them. It was Isla's turn to sacrifice for me." She looked at me again, and for the first time, I saw it. The break in her mind where love had become ownership, where family had become possession. "You would have been the aunt," she said to me, almost pleading. "The cool, artistic aunt. The baby would have had the best of both of us. Why couldn't you see that?" The jury deliberated for 3 days. Rebecca, Dad, and I stayed in a hotel nearby, unable to go far. Sarah joined us for dinners, and Kelly came by to check on us. We'd become a strange family, bonded by survival. When the verdict came, we filed back into the courtroom. Grace stood as the foreman read, "On the count of medical fraud, guilty. On the count of identity theft, guilty. On the count of elder abuse, guilty. On the count of false imprisonment, guilty. On the count of attempted murder, guilty. On all RICO violations, guilty." Grace didn't react. She simply nodded, as if she'd expected it. The sentencing came 2 weeks later. Judge Reeves looked stern as she spoke. "Ms. Whitfield, your crimes represent a profound betrayal of family trust. However, the court recognizes the severe mental illness component. I sentence you to 45 years in federal prison, with the possibility of transfer to a secure psychiatric facility after evaluation. You will receive mandatory psychiatric treatment throughout your incarceration." As they led Grace away, she turned to me one last time. "I'm the only one who really loved you enough to keep you close," she said. I wanted to respond, to have the last word. But Rebecca grabbed my hand, and Dad put his arm around my shoulders, and I realized Grace had already lost. She was alone, and we were together. 1 year later, I stood in my new studio, natural light flooding through the windows. The gallery show had been a success. My series, Breaking the Cycle, had sold out. It was art born from trauma, but transformed into something beautiful. "Isla," Dad called from the kitchen. "Rebecca's here." My sister. I could think of her that way now. Entered carrying a bottle of wine. "Thought we could celebrate your commission." The Portland Museum of Art had commissioned a piece about family trauma and healing. It was validation I'd never thought I'd receive. "Sarah's on her way," Rebecca said. "She's bringing her daughter." Sarah's daughter, Lily, had become like a niece to us. At 7, she was bright and creative, untouched by the darkness her mother had survived. We'd formed an unlikely family. Dad lived in a senior community now, but came for dinner every Sunday. Rebecca had relocated to Portland, opening a new practice specializing in fertility counseling for trauma survivors. Sarah worked with her, having gotten her certification with the settlement money from the lawsuit. Kelly Harper ran our foundation now, the Phoenix Fertility Foundation. We'd helped over 200 women escape reproductive coercion situations. Monica worked there too, leading their medical advocacy program. Even Daniel had found peace. He'd sent a letter 6 months ago, thanking us for freeing him from Grace's control. He'd remarried, chosen to remain child-free, and found fulfillment in advocacy work. Any word from Grace? Rebecca asked carefully. I pulled out the latest letter, still sealed. They came weekly from the psychiatric facility she'd been transferred to after a year in federal prison. I don't read them anymore, I said. Dr. Martinez says that's healthy. My therapist had helped me understand that Grace's version of love had always been possession. That the guilt I felt was programmed, not earned. That I had the right to choose my own family. The psychiatrist from the facility called. Dad said, joining us. Grace has been diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder with psychotic features, just as they suspected. She's responding to treatment, but...
He paused.
She still believes she did nothing wrong. Everything was justified in her mind. Maybe it always will be, Rebecca said. Some people can't be fixed, only contained.
The doorbell rang.
Sarah entered with Lily, who immediately ran to show me her latest drawing. As I knelt to admire it, I thought about children, a topic I'd been avoiding since learning about the damage from Grace's hormones. The test results came back, I said quietly, after Lily had run off to play. The damage is permanent. Reduced egg reserve, early menopause likely. The room fell silent. Then Rebecca spoke. You know there are other ways to be a mother.
I know.
Actually, I've been approved as a foster parent. There's a teenager, Emma. She's an artist. Been in the system for 3 years. I meet her next week. Dad's eyes filled with tears. That's wonderful, sweetheart. Grace would hate it, I said, then caught myself.
Sorry.
I'm trying not to make decisions based on her anymore. It's hard, Sarah said. She's like a ghost in every choice we make. But we're choosing differently, Rebecca added. That's what matters. That evening, we had dinner in my apartment, the one I decorated myself, without hand-me-downs or guilt. Dad told stories about our mother that he'd never shared before, humanizing the woman whose coldness had created Grace's desperation. Rebecca talked about her childhood with adoptive parents who'd loved her completely. Sarah shared Lily's latest achievement at school. We should invite Marcus, Rebecca said suddenly. Marcus Bauer, the lawyer who'd helped us pro bono through the civil suits. We'd been having coffee for 6 months now, taking things slowly. He understood trauma, understood the need for boundaries. Maybe next time, I said, blushing. He's good for you, Dad said. Patient.
Kind.
Nothing like Nathan, I finished. Who? It turns out Grace paid to date me and then exposed when I was getting too happy. We'd found that in her journals too. Every relationship I'd had, orchestrated or destroyed by Grace's invisible hand. It should have made me unable to trust, but instead it freed me. None of my failures had been real. I could start fresh. My phone buzzed. An unknown number, but I recognized the area code of Grace's facility. Hello. Isla. Grace's voice was different. Medicated probably, but also smaller. I wanted you to know I'm getting better. The doctors say I'm making progress. Grace, you're not supposed to call. I know. I bribed someone. Old habits. A pause. I wanted to say, no, I needed to say, the baby wouldn't have been beautiful. It would have been trapped. Like we were. Like I still am in my own mind. Grace. I dream about her sometimes. The daughter I wanted so badly. She has your eyes and my ambition. And she hates me. Even in my dreams, she hates me for who I am. The line went dead. I looked at my chosen family, all watching with concern. She's never called before, I said. Progress, Rebecca suggested. Or manipulation, Sarah countered. Maybe both, Dad said sadly. With Grace, it was always both. 5 years later, the gallery was packed. Breaking the cycle, 5 years later, was opening, and everyone who mattered was there. Dad, now 77, stood proud by my largest piece. Rebecca and her partner, James, admired the sculpture I'd made from Grace's journals, shredded, reformed, transformed into something beautiful. Sarah and Lily, now 12 and fierce, studied the interactive piece about choosing your own family. Kelly and Monica were there, the foundation having grown to help thousands. And Emma, my daughter in every way that mattered, stood beside me as reporters asked questions. She'd aged out of foster care into my home, then into my heart. Now 21, she was having her own art show next month. Ms. Monroe, a reporter asked, your sister was released to a halfway house last month. Any comment?
Grace.
Out after 5 years with good behavior and psychiatric improvement. Living in a facility in California, forbidden from contacting any of us, working as a clerk in a law library. I wish her peace, I said simply. Marcus squeezed my hand. We'd married 2 years ago, a small ceremony with our chosen family. He'd proposed in the studio, surrounded by art born from pain but transformed into beauty. The last piece, another reporter said, pointing to a covered canvas. What is it? I walked over and removed the cloth. It was a portrait of 4 sisters, Grace, Rebecca, me, and Sarah. We were children in the painting, playing together in a garden that never existed, in a childhood we never had. Grace was laughing, carefree, before the damage set in. It's called What Could Have Been, I said. It's forgiveness. Not for what she did, but for the child she was before she broke. The crowd murmured, some moved, some skeptical. Later, as the gallery emptied, I found a note tucked behind the painting. I recognized the handwriting immediately, though how she'd managed to get it there, I'd never know. Classic Grace. I see it. What could have been? It's beautiful. I'm sorry I couldn't be her.
Gee.
I crumpled the note, then smoothed it out, then folded it carefully and put it in my pocket. Rebecca appeared beside me. From her? I nodded. What did it say? What it needed to. We stood together, looking at the painting of 4 sisters who'd found each other through tragedy. In trying to possess us, Grace had freed us. In trying to control us, she'd united us. In trying to create her perfect family, she destroyed herself, but given us each other. Ready to go home? Marcus asked, Emma beside him. Home. A word that meant something different now. Not a place of obligation and guilt, but of choice and love. Almost, I said. I walked to the window and looked out at Portland's skyline. Somewhere out there in California, Grace was learning to live with herself. Here, we were learning to live without her shadow. I touched my stomach, a gesture I'd been hiding for weeks. The IVF had worked, not with my damaged eggs, but with the donors. A gift Rebecca had helped arrange, Sarah had supported, and Marcus had embraced. The baby would know its story, all of it. The truth, not hidden but acknowledged, processed and transformed. Grace had wanted a baby to heal our broken family. In the end, that's what would happen, just not the way she'd planned. This child would be born into a family that chose each other, that understood that love wasn't possession but presence.
Isla?
Dad called. We're all going to dinner.
All.
Such a simple word that contained so much. All of us who'd survived. All of us who'd chosen to build something better. I turned from the window, from Grace's ghost, from the past. My family was waiting, not the one I was born into, but the one born from surviving the worst betrayal. We were proof that you could break the cycle, that you could choose differently, that you could create beauty from the deepest pain. Coming, I called, and walked toward my future, leaving the painting of what could have been to guard the gallery of what actually was. Messy, complicated, chosen, and real. As we left, I didn't look back. I'd spent enough years looking backward, controlled by Grace's invisible strings. Now I looked forward, to Emma's art show, to the baby growing inside me, to Sunday dinners with too many people crowded around my table. Grace had been wrong about one thing. Family wasn't about blood or obligation. It was about showing up again and again, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. And we'd keep showing up, all of us, building something Grace could never understand, a family based on trust, not control, on love, not possession, on choice, not manipulation. In the end, that was our victory. Not that Grace was imprisoned, but that we were free. If someone you loved was destroying your life to save their own, would you have the strength to stop them, even if it meant losing them forever? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories about the dark secrets hidden in family bonds.